Her dog crashed into my legs. Again. Third morning in a row. I dropped my coffee. She laughed like it was nothing. He likes you, she said. I didn't believe her. Then she said something that stopped my breath completely. I know who your sister was to me. My whole body went cold in that park. I hadn't said my sister's name in 2 years. What she told me next would break my life open. My name is Maren Ellis, 31 years old, a trauma nurse at Lakeshore Memorial Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. I ran every morning at 6 in Lincoln Park because it was the only hour nobody needed anything from me. Her name was Josie Calloway, a veterinarian with a golden retriever named Biscuit, who had no respect for personal space. For 2 weeks, Biscuit tackled me near the fountain, and Josie apologized with the same tired, amused smile every time. On the 15th morning, she brought 2 coffees instead of 1 and just handed me the extra without asking. You looked like you needed it, she said. And I noticed her hands were shaking slightly in the cold. We started walking the loop together after that. Biscuit trotting between us like he'd arranged the whole thing himself. Josie talked about her clinic on Damon Avenue, about difficult surgeries, about a father she rarely mentioned by name. I talked about 12-hour shifts, about a fiancé named Daniel who had left 8 months earlier, about very little else. She never asked why he left. I appreciated that she never asked, even when I wanted her to. By the 4th week, I started setting my alarm 10 minutes earlier just to see her before my shift started. I told myself it was about the dog. I was already lying to myself by then. One rainy Tuesday, Biscuit refused to leave without me, sitting on my sneakers until Josie gave up pulling him. Come get coffee inside, she said. Before he decides you're adopting him. I said yes too fast. Inside the cafe. She took off her wet jacket and I noticed a small anchor tattoo behind her left ear. My sister had one exactly like that, I said before I could stop myself. And her face changed instantly. What was her name? Josie asked quietly, gripping her cup with both hands like it might disappear. Callie, I said. Callie Ellis. She died in a car accident on Lakeshore Drive 4 years ago. Josie went very still, staring at the table, and I felt the air in the room shift completely. I need to tell you something, she said. But not today. Not like this. Please trust me. I didn't trust anyone easily anymore. But something in her voice made me nod without arguing. That night I couldn't sleep, replaying every detail of her face when I said my sister's name. I started noticing things about Josie I'd been too careful to notice before. The way she listened like it mattered. She remembered my coffee order, my shift schedule, the fact that I hated cilantro, all without me repeating myself. 3 weeks after Callie's name came up, Josie still hadn't explained, and I stopped pushing her to. Instead we kept running, kept talking, kept pretending the question wasn't sitting between us every single morning. My coworker Priya noticed the change first. You're smiling at your phone, she said. Who is he? There's no he, I said. And Priya raised an eyebrow like she already understood more than I'd admitted. I hadn't said those words out loud to anyone since Daniel. Since the engagement that ended over exactly this. Daniel had said he could handle me figuring things out. Until the day he actually couldn't handle it. My mother, Diane, still didn't know why the wedding was called off. And I intended to keep it that way. Diane called every Sunday, always asking when I'd settled down properly, and I always changed the subject fast. Josie and I started having dinner twice a week. Always at her apartment, always with Biscuit asleep between us. She cooked badly and confidently, burning garlic every single time. And I never once told her to stop trying. One night she reached over and tucked my hair behind my ear. And neither of us moved for a while. I should go, I said. Not moving. You should, she agreed. Also not moving an inch. Neither of us went anywhere that night. And neither of us talked about what almost happened. Not yet. The next morning she left a note on my running shoes. Same time tomorrow? I'm not backing out. I read that note 4 times on the train before I let myself smile in front of strangers. We started holding hands on our runs, careless of who saw, which felt braver than it should have. At the hospital, I kept my personal life folded small, tucked behind charts and medication schedules, invisible on purpose. Lakeshore Memorial wasn't openly hostile, but 3 nurses had been quietly pushed out over personality conflicts that weren't personality conflicts. I watched my supervisor, Rhonda, correct a resident once for saying partner instead of husband about a patient's visitor. That kind of small correction taught me exactly how careful I needed to be. Every shift, every conversation. Josie's clinic was different, chaotic and warm, owned by her father Walter Calloway, a man she rarely discussed. "He's old-fashioned," she said once, and her jaw tightened in a way that told me not to ask more. I learned Josie had a boyfriend once. According to her staff records, a man named Grant no one had met. When I asked about him, she went quiet, then said only, "It's complicated. Give me time to explain." I gav henne time. Mostly because I understood exactly what it felt like to hide something enormous. We spent a Saturday at the lakefront trail, Biscuit exhausting himself chasing every squirrel within a 2-mile radius. "I used to bring Callie here," Josie said suddenly, stopping mid-step, watching the water instead of me. My heart dropped into my stomach. "You knew my sister." "Actually knew her. Not just heard about her. We were roommates freshman year at Northwestern," Josie said. "She was my best friend. She was more than that too." I sat down hard on a bench because my legs stopped trusting themselves to hold me upright. "Kelly was gay," I said slowly, "and nobody in my family ever told me. Or maybe nobody knew." "She knew," Josie said. "She was terrified. We were both terrified. This was 14 years ago. A different world. Why didn't you ever come find us? Why show up now? In this exact park. With this exact dog." "Biscuit was her dog," Josie said, voice cracking. "She left him with me before the accident. I never rehomed him." I put my hand over my mouth, staring at the golden retriever sniffing happily at the grass nearby. "I moved to this neighborhood because I saw an obituary with your name in it, tagged as her sister. I followed you for weeks before I let the dog accidentally run into you," Josie admitted, ashamed. "I'm sorry." Anger and grief and something dangerously close to relief collided inside me all at the same moment. "You lied to me for months," I said. "About everything. About why you're even in my life." "I didn't lie about how I feel now," Josie said. "That part happened on its own. I swear it did." I walked away from her that day, Biscuit whining behind me, and I didn't look back once. For a week I avoided the park entirely, running a different route, eating alone, answering nobody's texts. Priya finally cornered me in the break room. "Whatever happened? You look like you lost someone twice." "I did," I said. And for the first time in years, I told someone the whole truth about Callie. Priya didn't flinch, didn't ask invasive questions, just handed me a tissue and said, "Go talk to her." My mother called that same week, and something in my exhaustion made me finally answer honestly for once. "Mom, did you know about Callie? That she liked women? Before the accident? Did you ever know?" The silence on the phone lasted so long I thought the call had dropped entirely. "I suspected," Diane finally said. "I told myself I was wrong because it was easier than being right. She died thinking she had to hide from us," I said, my voice breaking apart on every word. "I know," my mother whispered. "I have to live with that. Please don't make the same mistake. Marin." I hung up shaking, unsure if my mother had just confirmed my worst fear or opened an actual door. 2 days later I went back to the park at 6 in the morning, and Josie was already there. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said, not moving toward me, giving me all the space I needed. "I'm not okay," I said, "but I want to understand. Tell me everything about her. About you too. We sat on that same bench for 3 hours while she told me the college years I'd never known. Callie had been funny, reckless, terrified of our father's temper, and desperately in love with Josie in secret. She wanted to tell your parents, Josie said. She was building up the courage. Then the accident happened first. I cried for my sister in a way I hadn't let myself cry at her actual funeral 4 years earlier. Josie held me without saying anything useful, which turned out to be exactly the right thing to do. I'm angry you didn't tell me sooner, I said. But I understand why you were scared too. I was scared you'd only want me because of her, Josie admitted. Not because of anything real between us. It's real, I said quietly. It became real before I even knew about Callie. That part isn't borrowed. We started over that morning. Slower this time. Both of us finally telling the truth as we went. My mother asked to meet Josie 3 weeks later, which shocked me more than almost anything else had. Diane sat stiffly across the dinner table, asking careful questions, studying Josie like a stranger reading a difficult letter. You knew my daughter, Diane said to Josie. The one I never really let myself know. She was the bravest person I'd ever met, Josie said. I think Marin is exactly like her that way. My mother excused herself to the bathroom and didn't come back for 20 minutes, crying where she thought I couldn't hear. That dinner didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open that had been sealed for 4 long years. At the hospital, rumors started anyway. The way rumors always find their way through hallways nobody can control. Someone saw Josie drop off lunch for me at the nurse's station, holding my hand for one careless second. By the next shift, Rhonda called me into her office with a tight, unreadable expression on her face. I need to remind you about our professionalism policy, she said, not quite meeting my eyes as she spoke. Which policy specifically? I asked. The one that only seems to apply to certain relationships and not others? Rhonda didn't answer directly, just repeated herself. And I left the office with my hands clenched at my sides. Priya found me in the supply closet 10 minutes later, breathing hard, trying not to cry in uniform. They can't fire you for this, she said. Not legally. But they can make your life miserable trying. I filed a report with HR anyway, documenting exactly what Rhonda had said, refusing to let it disappear quietly. Josie's world had its own quiet danger waiting, one she still hadn't fully explained to me yet. Her father Walter ran the clinic's finances tightly, and Josie's name was on none of the ownership paperwork. My dad thinks I'm still with Grant, she admitted one night. He set that story up himself. For the clinic's image. Grant is real, I asked. Or another cover story, like the boyfriend line in your employee file. He's a family friend, Josie said. My father wants us together for optics. Clients trust a normal family. So what happens when your father finds out about me? I asked, already dreading the honest answer. I don't know, Josie said. He funds the clinic. He funds my life. I've never tested what happens after. That answer sat heavy between us for days. An unspoken deadline neither of us wanted to name aloud. I started seeing Walter Calloway's name differently after that. No longer just a distant, disapproving figure in stories. Then I remembered something that made my stomach drop. Walter Calloway sat on Lakeshore Memorial's hospital board. My own boss's boss reported, eventually, to the same man who didn't know his daughter loved women. I told Josie, and her face went pale in a way I hadn't seen since the day at the bench. If he finds out about us through the hospital, she said, it won't just be my problem anymore. We agreed to be more careful, which mostly meant being sadder and more distant in public than we wanted. Careful didn't last. Careful never lasts when two people keep choosing each other every single morning anyway. 6 weeks in, Daniel resurfaced, calling my mother directly instead of calling me, which should have warned me immediately. He wants to apologize, Diane said. He's engaged now. He says he owes you closure before his wedding. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop, mostly out of curiosity, partly to prove I'd moved forward. Daniel looked older, calmer, and immediately apologized for how he'd handled things when I first came out to him. I panicked, he said. I told people things I shouldn't have. I think your mother's brother heard it from someone. My stomach turned cold. What exactly did you say, Daniel? And who exactly did it reach? I told my sister you'd experimented with a woman before us, he said. It wasn't true. I'm sorry. That lie had apparently traveled through extended family for months, distorted further with every single retelling along the way. My Uncle Rick, a deacon at our old church, had heard a version involving Josie by name somehow. 2 days later, Rick called Walter Calloway directly, because their sons had gone to the same private school together. I found out only when Josie called me, sobbing, saying her father had summoned her home immediately that night. He knows, she said. Someone told him everything, twisted and ugly, and he wants me at the house tonight. I offered to come with her. She said no. Terrified of what her father might say in front of me, I paced my apartment for 4 hours, phone in hand, waiting for a text that didn't come until midnight. He said I embarrassed the family, she finally texted. He said he needs time. I don't know what that means. The next morning, Josie didn't show up at the park for the first time in over 2 months. I texted, called, waited by Biscuit's usual patch of grass until my shift started, and she never appeared. 3 days of silence followed, each one worse than the last, each one convincing me I'd lost her. On the 4th day, a letter arrived at my apartment, handwritten. No return address. Just Josie's careful handwriting inside. My father froze my access to clinic funds, it read. He wants me to choose between him and you. I need space to figure out how to survive without his money before I can figure out anything else. I read that letter standing in my hallway, feeling exactly like I had the day Daniel first walked away. Priya found me at work looking hollow and asked if I wanted to talk about it during lunch. She's choosing money, I said bitterly, though even as I said it, I didn't fully believe my own words. Or she's terrified, Priya said. Those aren't always the same thing, even when they look identical from outside. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts, trying to outrun the ache with exhaustion instead of feeling it. My mother, of all people, called and told me not to give up on Josie without a real fight. I gave up on your sister's happiness by staying quiet, Diane said. I won't watch you make my mistake too. Her words stayed with me longer than I expected, especially coming from a woman who rarely admitted fault. I decided to go find Josie myself, showing up at the Calloway family house uninvited, heart pounding the whole drive. Walter Calloway answered the door himself, tall, stern, studying me like a liability walking straight into his home. I'm Marin, I said. I'm not here to argue with you. I need to see Josie for 5 minutes. She's not available, he said flatly, starting to close the door before Josie's voice called out from inside. Let her in. Dad, Josie said, appearing behind him, eyes red, jaw set with a determination I hadn't seen yet. Walter hesitated, then stepped aside, arms crossed, clearly unwilling to leave the room while I spoke to his daughter. I'm not choosing money over you, Josie said immediately. I'm terrified, but I'm not choosing him over you. Then why the silence, I asked. Why the letter instead of a phone call? Instead of just talking to me? Because I needed to know I could survive losing everything before I promised you I wouldn't run again. Walter interrupted, voice sharp. This clinic took 30 years to build. I won't watch it collapse over gossip. It's not gossip, Dad, Josie said, turning to face him fully for the first time in the conversation. It's true. I love her, Josie said, gesturing toward me, voice shaking but clear. I'm not going to keep lying about that. Walter's face went through several emotions at once, landing finally on something between anger and exhausted resignation. Your mother would have handled this better than I am, he said quietly, sitting down heavily in his armchair. That sentence surprised both of us into silence. A crack of vulnerability neither Josie nor I had expected from him. She used to say I cared more about the family name than about my own children, Walter admitted, staring at the floor. She was right, he said. I don't want to prove her right again. Not with the time I have left. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully. But it was the first door Walter had opened instead of closed that year. I need time, he said. Don't expect me at your wedding tomorrow. But don't expect me gone forever either. Josie walked me out. Both of us shaking. Both of us cautiously, disbelievingly hopeful for the first time in weeks. I'm still figuring out money. Work. All of it, she said. But I'm not figuring it out without you. We stood in that driveway and kissed for the first time in front of anyone who could see us. Back at the hospital. My HR complaint finally moved forward. And Rhonda was formally reprimanded for her comments. It wasn't a dramatic victory. Just a quiet memo and an awkward apology. But it mattered more than expected. Priya threw a small dinner to celebrate, inviting Josie without asking me first, which told me exactly how she felt. 2 months later, Josie opened her own small practice 2 blocks from the park, funded partly by her savings. Walter didn't attend the opening, but he sent flowers with a card that simply said, "Proud of your work." It wasn't everything Josie wanted from him, but it was more than either of us had expected that spring. My mother started attending a support group for parents, something she never would have considered before that year. I go for Callie, she told me once. I go so I can be someone your sister needed and didn't have. On the anniversary of Callie's accident, we planted a bench near the fountain where Biscuit first knocked me over. The plaque read simply, "For Callie, who loved fiercely and quietly." Some love stories continue after we're gone. Diane cried at the dedication, and for once, I let myself cry openly beside her without apologizing for it. Josie held Biscuit's leash the whole time, the dog sitting patiently, as if he understood exactly what the day meant. That night, Josie asked me to move in with her, nervous in a way I'd never seen from her before. "I already feel like I live at your place most nights anyway," I said, laughing through unexpected tears. We signed the lease together the following week, choosing an apartment 3 blocks from both our workplaces, close to the park. My coworkers threw us a small housewarming, and even Rhonda showed up, awkward but genuinely trying to make amends. A year after Biscuit first tackled me, Walter Calloway finally came to dinner, stiff but present, staying until dessert. He didn't say much, but he asked Josie about her new practice, and that question alone felt like real progress. My mother now walks with us some mornings, slower than Biscuit likes, but present in a way she never was before. I still think about Callie every single day, but the grief has softened into something closer to gratitude. She never got to walk through the door she was building toward, so I decided to walk through mine. Some mornings I still can't believe a clumsy golden retriever led me back to my own sister's memory, and forward into love. 2 years after that first collision in the park, I finally understood. Some love stories don't end, they just find new people to carry them. On a quiet Sunday morning, surrounded by my mother, Josie, and an old dog finally slowing down, I felt entirely, unapologetically home. Bendy.